Hi, Coach Laura training. I am excited to talk about my experience with Ironman Maryland. I'm totally smiling like a crazy girl because it was a lot of fun. So, while we have people joining, I wanted to talk a little bit about, well, I do put these posts usually on YouTube. So if you're joining on YouTube, you'll see me looking at the screen and reading things and thanking people for hearts. And those are things you may not be able to see. So, I did want to let you know that. So I'm not going crazy or anything if you're watching this on YouTube later. But if you have something to say or any questions, please feel free to post them here. I also have my Twitter up. So if you have questions that I'm not seeing or you want to post them on Twitter, then that's great. And you can always post things there that I can answer later too. So thank you for joining. And so this is Ironman Maryland we're talking. And so with this experience, I know I've shared on other Periscopes that I've trained for a while for this event. And it was kind of devastating to me when they canceled it because of the hurricane. So originally it was supposed to take place on October 3rd, but it didn't. And that was really upsetting to me, of course, to work so hard for something and then have it canceled. So, but I will tell you, this is, they did reschedule for 2 weeks later, and I was able to attend on October 17th, which was just almost a week ago. So, and I was super thrilled to be able to go, but it was hard to get, I was excited to go, but it was kind of hard to get way excited because I was afraid that they were going to cancel again. I guess there's always that scare. And so I want to talk about race morning. Race morning, we're all there. It's actually we were expecting cold temperatures, and it was certainly cold. I think it was 46 degrees, and then with the wind chill, like we're saying, it was like 36 degrees. So it was super windy that morning. And so they announced probably 10 minutes before the start. We were supposed to start around about 7. Because it was postponed, it was originally going to start at 6:50, but it ended up starting at 7. Because it was postponed, it was a little darker, so that's why. But they ended up starting at 7:30. Or they announced that they would start at 7:30. The high wind advisory, they were going to have to shorten the race, so they did shorten the swim a little bit. At first, originally they told us it was going to be 1.2, which is half the distance, but they actually ended up doing 3,000 meters, which I was grateful for once I got in the water. Of course, when you do your first, you want to do the whole thing, and I was so grateful. We were afraid they were going to cancel the whole thing because it was super windy, and that's dangerous, but they ended up having it. And usually when they start a race, I'm not so worried because I know they're gonna continue with it, so that's great. And so, yes, it was very windy. We got in the water. It was actually a rolling start, which is a little different. Sometimes they'll have wave starts. But this one, you self-seated, and then you went in with about the time that you could do. I was a little towards the front, and it was really actually crowded the whole entire time. The original route was going to be a rectangle, but they ended up doing triangles. We had to do 2 triangles. So it was crowded the whole time. It was salt water, and it was very choppy. So I drank a lot more water than I would like to admit on that. And that salt water, it isn't going to help you in the rest of your race. And it did have a detrimental effect on my race. But I was so glad to be doing it and being there. And I knew when I was in the water, I'm going to be able to do this event. So I was grateful to get out of the water and then head into transition and grab my bike and get on my bike. I knew it was going to be cold out there. The winds are what make it really cold, even with cold air temperatures. It was actually, the water was warm compared to the air. And so once I got into transition, I decided I am going to take the extra time it takes to put arm warmers and knee warmers on so I could just be more comfortable. I knew if I was more comfortable on the ride, I'd probably ride better, and I think that's very true, and I did, and I was grateful I put them on. So it started out really good. I got into my groove. Where I needed to be in terms of watts and everything on the bike. And then then going through one of the aid stations, I had a little trouble. I grabbed a bottle. Usually the water bottles they give you are already open, but this one had the little pull tab and everything on it still, and so I had to open that with my mouth. It kind of changed my timing, and I had somebody in front of me, and I had to slow down, and I only had one arm on the handlebars and kind of lost control and had a little accident. I wrecked. So I am grateful my bike wasn't damaged. I did end up putting the chain back on and kind of adjusting some things with the gears, and but I was grateful the gears weren't broken, and I didn't break my arm or anything, and I was able to, well, I don't know, maybe I did. It still hurts, but I was able to get going and do that. But so that was really good. For the first about 40 miles, it wasn't too windy. Wind, of course, will slow you down. The things I'm dealing with, too, are I'm still really anxious to ride in traffic. And there is going to be some traffic on 112-mile ride, but not too much. It wasn't really too bad, so I was grateful for that. But it did start getting super windy around, I would say, 38, 40 miles. And it just kept blowing and blowing and blowing, and it didn't let up. And so mentally we did expect wind, so I kind of just put my head down and did what I could do. I think the thing that was scary for me was being blown around. I'm not super heavy, and so that made me really nervous. And so mentally I kind of slowed down, probably more than I needed to. But I tried to keep it going, and I tried to, move forward, and I was passing a lot of people. The swim was a little tough for me, so I had a lot of time to make up, I knew, on the bike. And unfortunately, the salt water I was having a hard time tolerating. I mean, I didn't throw up, but I felt waves of nausea. So, if you haven't done an Ironman or anything before and you do it in salt water, do your best not to get any water. If you swallow a lot of that water, it will mess with your nutrition. And so I did struggle to get as much nutrition as I had planned on the bike. That ultimately affected my run. So I did as much as my body would tolerate. I just took as much as I could. Tried to keep my legs going. It was slower time than I wanted to do and that I'm capable of. It really got windy on the last part. I mean, it took everything you could to go 11 miles per hour for part of it. But you just truck along and you go for it, and I'm always grateful when I don't have a flat or something, because there were a lot of people on the side of the road fixing flats. A few people had raced or wrecked. A lot of people had hypothermia and were pulled off. So I was grateful that I'm still out there. It was fairly, it was cold, but it was comfortable enough I could keep going, and that was good. I was really happy when I got to like 10 miles left, and I'm thinking, good, I can get this done pretty fast. And then the wind was just horrible. So I wanted to make up more time on the ride, but not as much as I wanted to. But I was grateful. I got off the bike and I was like, yay, I didn't wreck. That was fantastic. I wrecked, but I didn't hurt myself really bad, and I didn't have to fix a flat, because I don't know if my hands would have worked. I mean, they were still cold. I did wear short finger gloves. I chose short finger gloves. I've actually done a race earlier this year in really cold temperatures, a little colder than we were dealing with, so I knew I could handle it, but I had worn really thick gloves, and I had a really hard time grabbing my nutrition. So this time I chose short finger. I was glad because I could get to my nutrition. My hands were a little cold, but it was doable. Got off my bike. Normally in Ironman events, they have people that take your bike and rack it for you, but in this instance where they had to reschedule, which I'm so glad they did, first time in history ever that they've done it. But they were short-handed volunteers, so we ended up having to rack our bikes, which was, you have to go all the way in, and then where my bike was situated, I had to go all the way back. So it was like running twice, and that's sort of hard to do with a bike. So needless to say, I got out on the run. I'm always excited to do the run. The run is my favorite part. So I tried to get into my good groove. There were heavy winds the first mile, headwinds. So the time wasn't as as quick as I wanted on that first mile, but I pushed through. Even on the bike, I was like, wow, if it's pushing us, we're having headwind here, we should get a tailwind on the other side, but not so. It seemed to come from every angle. I think it's like we were in wind the whole time, from the side, it was coming from all angles. So the run was a lot like that too. So we did have it seemed like it was coming stronger from the north. So I kind of knew when I could push it a little more and not, but I got in a groove. And what's fun about these events is the people and the cheering. And I know I said that on my clip before when I announced that I was doing this, but what's so fun is that everybody's cheering for each other. And with this route, we actually had the cycling was 2 big loops. The run was kind of a half horseshoe, and then we did it again, and then we did it partial third time. So you got to see people a lot, which is sort of nice because people are cheering. The aid stations are every like 1.5 to 2 miles. You're seeing that those people frequently, and they're wonderful volunteers. You wear your bib number and they have your name on your bib number, so they're all cheering for you by name, which is like, yay, go Laura. And I'm like, yay, they know me, but they don't really know me, but they're cheering for me, and that really helps a ton. And so mostly I stuck with fluids on the run. I tolerate that better. I really tolerate most anything, except I realize now I do not tolerate salt water very well because it really hurt. Thanks for joining. We're having some more people join. But so when it came to the marathon, I think I wanted to talk about pacing. I mean, pacing is key with long course. You really have to know what your pacing is, know what your capability is, and then stick to it. If you go out too fast or anything, you're going to die. It's going to be a bad scenario. For me, I should have been able to maintain a 4-hour marathon. If the nutrition were where it needed to be on the bike, that would have really helped. But I also have some knee and hip damage that I've been dealing with in training from the accident and being hit by the truck. So I knew that, I'm going to do what my body will tell me I can do. And that's kind of where I was at. I set my pace. I held my pace. The first half marathon was close to 2 hours, which is what I wanted. And then the nutrition, I just didn't have it in me to support what I needed. And you have to get that on the bike. So I was hoping it would get me a little farther. My knee was starting to hurt at 11. So I just kind of kept it going. And you cheer for other people, and everybody, like I said, is like cheering for each other. And you get in your mode and you go. I was passing people a lot on the run, which is always helpful. There's a lot of people walking, so it's really tempting to go, oh, I just want to walk a little bit. But I also wanted to get to the finish line before it got too dark, and I knew that we started later. I didn't have the fastest swim, and my cycling was slower than I wanted. And so I knew there was that possibility of being out in the dark, and I didn't want that. So even though it was fairly lit in areas on that run, I wanted to keep going and get to that finish line a little sooner. So I just plugged along. I really think with an Ironman, the race comes down to the last 8 miles, 6 miles. And that's kind of where your nutrition from the bike really comes into play. And that was a struggle in terms of my legs just didn't have a lot of oomph in them. I didn't get the nutrition on the bike. So, don't drink salt water as much as you can, because that's tough. But it was definitely a great experience. Especially the last part when you go run, into the finish, and he says, Mike Riley says, Laura Erickson, you're an Ironman. That's always fantastic. I found my husband and embraced him, and the first thing I said is, can I do another one? So if your question is, am I going to do another one, or am I interested in doing another one? Absolutely. I felt that way actually before I did the event, and I still feel that way immediately. I wanted to do another one. I want to improve. I want to do better. I want to, have more fun doing these. It's like you're part of a club. An Ironman is something significant, and people recognize that. And there's lots of people that, if you feel like this isn't something you could do, you probably can. More than you think you can probably do this. And I would say probably because you've got to train. You've got to be willing to put the work in and the time in that it takes to train. Now, I've got kind of a joke going on my Facebook page about, is an Ironman harder than having a baby? I've had 5 babies, and I have had some babies naturally, and I will tell you, I believe that an Ironman is easier than having a baby, and I've had them with epidurals and without, so I can tell you it is, I think, easier. But, it's all relative. Maybe if I had pushed myself really hard, it would have been harder, but it's just a different kind of pain, I would say. But, there's a lot of joking on about, about if you've had a baby, you can do an Ironman, and that's very true. I think you totally can. It is very doable. It's challenging, but it's doable, and I think that's what's great about it. But I wanted to talk a little bit about what I experienced after the event too. So of course, I was ecstatic and excited that I had completed the event. And I set this goal for myself when I was in high school. So like 25 years ago, I wanted to do this. It's kind of hanging over my head or in the back of my head for so long. It's such a great feeling to accomplish it. And so that was a great relief and just exciting. I tend to relive my races. And this one was especially one I relived a lot because it was such a grand event. And I found that this is common actually with a lot of people, because I've heard this from a lot of other Ironman, that they can't sleep after. And I didn't sleep, even though you're tired, I just didn't sleep much because I was still thinking about it and reliving it and just experiencing it again. So you might, if you do an Ironman, you might expect that you might not get a lot of sleep after, even though you're tired. It actually lasted for a few nights for me. It was kind of on and off, and so cat naps are good. In terms of recovery, I think for the most part, I'm no more sore than I would have been for a half Ironman or even a marathon. I think that you're going to get that much soreness. So my problem is more my knee and my hip and the issues I've been having with that injury. So I think, it's like any other recovery. I feel like it probably is going to it will take longer to recover from this, but I definitely think it's doable. It's manageable. I'm not limping. I mean, there were people in the race that were limping and they were struggling. I have some issues, but it's not to the point of limping and things. You might want to consider if you have that kind of injury, then maybe you need to postpone your event. But certainly I could walk. I could probably go running the next day if I wanted, but my legs are tired. I think it's valuable to allow yourself to recover, and it takes a while to recover from these things. I think you have somewhat of a cellular fatigue, if you want to call it that. So, but yeah, great experience. I had no blistering on my feet. I did use some chafing cream, and Altra shoes were fantastic for me. I had no sunburn. Of course, the sun wasn't out much. It was cold, which was great. The only problem I really had was chafing. I had chafing on the back of my neck, even though I used a lot of chafing stuff. I just have to sight so much. I have a damaged left shoulder, so I don't swim straight. I have to really sight a lot. So I do have some chafing on my neck if you really want to see it. I have a picture on Instagram. It's fantastic. I also have a picture of my chafing under my arm. So I had some chafing there. It's starting to heal up. But by the way, I'm wearing my Ironman. It's my finisher shirt, and they give you a finisher hat. That's only if you finish. So they give you a medal too that you saw at the beginning. So, and a bag. Like, I think all women that have babies should get all those things and a certificate too. So it's definitely, you certainly don't do it for that, but it is nice to be able to wear it, and I'm proud of what I did. But yeah, definitely doable. If you think that you can do this and want to do it or have a desire to do it, look into it. Get the training in and have fun. Have fun with it. And I'm totally going to do more. So I'm sure you'll see more announcements about what's up next for me. But thanks for joining in, and thank you for the hearts, and thank you for being here and supporting me. I really appreciate all those likes and comments, and I got a lot of texts and messages after the event, so I appreciate that so much. So thank you, and have a great day.